Canadian wildfires have more staying power than Square Enix mobile games, and Final Fantasy XIV Mobile is another brick in the wall. So what the heck just happened? What do you mean it's being terminated? Bruh. It hasn't even been released globally yet. Well, in today's video, let's address that very question, and also how this may not only affect the future of Final Fantasy XIV, but Square Enix on the whole, and what is becoming an increasing trend for them. Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and it seems as if the servers will remain ever cold. You know, I keep forgetting this thing even existed. I suppose I wasn't the only one that was apathetic towards this game's existence. Due to adjustments in business operations and changes in the market environment, Tencent and Square Enix have, through amicable negotiation, decided to terminate the licensing agreement for Final Fantasy XIV Mobile Chinese Edition. To everyone who has been looking forward to the global version, we also offer our sincere apologies for being unable to meet your expectations, and then we have a service termination schedule. Now, there is one disclaimer we have to talk about, and that is the actual developer of Final Fantasy XIV Mobile, because it's not Square Enix. It's a studio known as Lightspeed Studios. Who are they? Well, they are under Tencent. To my understanding, if you want to do business in China, you have to have a Chinese company essentially do that business for you for China. For instance, when it comes to doing business in China, World of Warcraft uses NetEase. So the disclaimer here is that we don't necessarily know who initially came to this discussion between Tencent and Square Enix and said, let's kill it. The only real clarification that I've seen come from this part of this entire post right here. Tencent and Square Enix have, through amicable negotiation, decided to terminate the licensing agreement for Final Fantasy XIV Mobile Chinese Edition. So it is possible that Square Enix didn't want Final Fantasy XIV to be shut down when it comes to the mobile version, and that Tencent initiated this. Personally speaking, when it comes to Final Fantasy and just Square Enix overall, when it comes to their mobile division lately, even if it was Tencent that initially said, hey, we might want to can this, I kind of doubt they got a lot of pushback from Square Enix on that one. But while Lightspeed Studios were the ones actively developing this game, it's not like Square Enix wasn't contributing anything. Even if it's small, there was still a level of effort being put in by Square Enix here, even from Final Fantasy XIV Mobile's own admission here on the website. Even when you go back to their announcement page here, they have an entire piece of art here that says officially licensed and supervised by Square Enix. However, I do think there's a larger discussion to be had here, because either way, this game didn't succeed. If it was going to make a ton of money, they would not have ended it. They ended this because it wasn't seeing, or were going to see, the level of success they wanted it to, due to adjustments in business operations and changes in the market environment. Either Tencent and or Square Enix wanted to do something different at this point in time, and in conjunction with that, the game itself just wasn't going to bang. And I also can't say I'm going to particularly mourn it. There were some elements to it that seemed kind of neat, especially with what they were able to do with the different engine the game had. Quite a bit of the customization and glamour options that were available in the mobile version seemed rather interesting, especially compared to the regular client. And while the mobile market is very vast, there's also a ton of competition there, and Square Enix repeatedly over the years have tried to break into that market, and they haven't really succeeded to the degree and level that I think they want. But this transitions us into a conversation about this ongoing evolution at Square Enix right now. It's not an evolution that has happened overnight, it's been gradual, but I think it's ramping up in recent years. Let's get into that right now. Seems like every few months a new Square Enix mobile game goes offline or announces their own termination. I can't say this is a particular surprise to me, especially considering recently it really does feel as if Square Enix wants to go in a different direction when it comes to game development. From them completely going back to the drawing board of what Dragon Quest XII was even going to be, to doubling down and going multi-platform, to also recommitting on investing in Final Fantasy XIV. I don't read this as Square Enix moving away from Final Fantasy XIV and beginning an entire process of doing so with this, and with them pulling away from a lot of their mobile investments over the last couple of years. It really does feel to me as if Square Enix is trying to realign themselves as a traditional developer and publisher. This is purely anecdotal, but I feel as if you were interested in Final Fantasy XIV and you weren't already a player, chances are you would probably just go for the very generous free trial Final Fantasy XIV already has. And if you were interested in mobile games, you would probably go for one of the numerous other competitors that are out there. While I never managed to get my own hands on the Final Fantasy XIV mobile version myself, I do wonder if the magic of the world of Final Fantasy XIV and just the act of playing the game didn't really transfer over when they try to convert it into a mobile game, even if there were some bright spots here and there. I think we're going to see a more conservative Square Enix than what we've been accustomed to over the last decade or so. I think they're going to continue to double down on Final Fantasy XIV's console and PC version, and also just stick to their guns. When Dragon Quest XII was first announced, the idea behind it that it was going to be a massive direction change for the entire series, and when they went back to the drawing board, it feels far more in line with the traditional vibes of a Dragon Quest game. You had mobile games like Octopath Traveler's mobile game, and also Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and now they've either made or are making traditional RPGs for those stories with the HD 2D art style. When it comes to Final Fantasy Resonance, as we talked about yesterday on the channel, in a lot of ways, it's a return to an older formula of Final Fantasy. That isn't just mindless conjecture either. It's one of the key features of the game, as we talked about yesterday. A return to the familiar. A classic RPG adventure unfolds in a world filled with beloved Final Fantasy elements, airships, crystals, espers, and moogles woven into the fabric of the story, and so much more. A return for turn-based Final Fantasy as well. A whole host of side content that feels very in line with older Final Fantasy. And because Final Fantasy Brave Exvius was a gacha game where you could get old Final Fantasy characters, they're keeping that with the Vision system. We can get old Final Fantasy characters like Lightning and Cloud and plop them into your party. Sure, that's a holdover from the mobile version. However, the effect remains the same, doubling down on the identity of what Final Fantasy used to be, and you could argue this isn't a mainline entry. You would be correct in that. However, the fact they're doing this at all to me speaks volumes. I mean, look at the art here for Final Fantasy Resonance. There's no way I'm the only one that sees the comparison here. All of these elements might be minor on the surface, and you can try to rationalize it as just Final Fantasy Resonance, but when taken in conjunction with what they're doing and have done with Dragon Quest XII, to at the last fan fest coming out on stage and saying, don't worry guys, we're going to invest properly into Final Fantasy XIV here. Again, I think a moment like this is far bigger than we realized at the time, because something like the fan fest back in Anaheim felt important for the future of Final Fantasy XIV, especially coming off a polarizing expansion with Dawn Trail. However, I think it signals far more to the future of Square Enix more than anything, doubling down on their old identity, and also the things that are already established and work, just straight up work. And I'll say this right now, I'm going to be very interested to see what form Final Fantasy XVII takes. Maybe it's so long in development that they don't really have the ability to go back to the drawing board for it, or maybe it isn't. I think the next few years for Square Enix are going to be very telling and fascinating overall. And personally, I don't view this direction shift to be a bad thing. They're clearly still willing to do new things, like with the Adventures of Elliot, which is on the fast track to be my game of the year for this year. Like, I'm not joking, this game was absolutely phenomenal. I loved it from start to finish. And they're not done. This also comes out this year. We are seeing a fundamentally different Square Enix than what we have seen in the past. I don't think it happened overnight, but we are witnessing a Square Enix that to me is increasingly putting more emphasis and importance on brand identity and far more frequent releases. And not with Kingdom Hearts or anything like that, but for a lot of their smaller entries, they get those games out the door rather quickly. And I love the ones that I've played. I mean, Bravely Default and Adventures of Elliot, and from the looks of it, Final Fantasy Resonance are gonna be some of my favorite games of the last few years. Yeah, you could argue Bravely Default was an old DS game, 3DS game, but still, their pace of getting games of high quality out the door, I think is an envy of the industry. Now, don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy and Square Enix aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, it's taken way too long to get Kingdom Hearts 4 and also Dragon Quest 12 out the door, though I can understand why it's taken so long for Dragon Quest 12 because they went back to the drawing board for it pretty much. But look at something like Final Fantasy VII's remake series. Yeah, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but it's a set of 3 AAA games that don't take 5+ years for each of them to come out. They're packed with content. They're huge games. The Rebirth more so than remake, but still. And if they continue to get better at this, not just for Final Fantasy, but for like Kingdom Hearts and Dragon Quest, and not just like padding in between mainline releases with like remakes and all that. If they continue to get better at this and more consistent at this for all of their franchises, I think we can see a far more optimistic landscape for Square Enix in the not so distant future. I'm personally optimistic for Square Enix's future. I've been loving the remake series. I'm looking forward to Resonance. Adventures of Elliot's probably my game of the year for this year. I'm looking forward to Evercold. We have Final Fantasy VII Revelations. I mean, I even love the look of Dragon Quest XII. A lot of what they're doing right now appeals to me specifically. And if this is a taste of what is to come, then I'm on board. But here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on what happened to Final Fantasy XIV's mobile version. If you didn't care about it, tell me why. But if you were looking forward to it, how do you feel right now? I would love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And Final Fantasy Resonance has a whole new trailer out, people, and it's juicy. Want to get up to date with everything going on with Final Fantasy Resonance, and also find out if you should be looking forward to it? Check out this video right here for more. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!